Another story from the Twilight Zone. It's called The Time Traveller. It was the 15th day of March 2025, and George Herbert is making final adjustments to his latest invention, a time machine. His laboratory is in fact a garden shed in Finsbury Park, London. George puts down the spanner and smiles to himself. At last my time machine is ready for testing, he sighs. The contraption is built from various car wrecks, a broken alarm clock, an old leather armchair, and a rusty electric lawnmower which George had salvaged from the local scrapyard. The old grey-haired man takes off his white lab coat and sits down in the armchair. He stares at the control panel in front of him. Now, where shall I go? Forwards or backwards in time? He asks himself. He turns a dial on a control panel to the right. Forwards, I think. 10 years into the future. Turns the ignition key and the engine roars into life. George checks his fuel gauge. The thermoreaction chamber is fully charged, he sighs. All those years working in the nuclear power plants are finally going to pay off, he pauses. So he presses a red button on the control panel, and suddenly the time machine is surrounded by a kaleidoscope of multicoloured lights. It's the 15th day of March 2035. George Herbert is sitting in his time machine, surrounded by rubble and bricks. Oh, I wonder where I am, thinks George. There is nothing but a concrete wasteland and piles of broken bricks where the houses used to be. The old man walks through the ruined city until he comes to the remains of a wall. A sign on the wall reads, Finsbury Park, Tube Station. George scratches his head. Oh. There must have been a nuclear war or something, he frowns. I wonder when that happened. The old scientist wipes a tear from his eye and walks back through the ruined city towards his time machine. He sits back down in the old leather armchair. Maybe if I go backwards in time, I can stop the war from happening. He talks to himself quite a lot. George turns a dial on the control panel to the left. He turns the ignition key, and the engine roars back into life. He checks his fuel gauge. I've got enough plutonium for 4 more trips, he sighs. The date is the 15th of March 2030 AD. And George Herbert is sitting in his time machine, surrounded by rubble and piles of broken bricks. Not far enough, he frowns. He turns the dial further to the left and presses a button on the control panel. Suddenly the time machine is surrounded by a kaleidoscope of multicoloured lights. The date is the 15th of March 2026 AD. George scratches his head. The time machine still sat in the midst of a pile of rubble. It must have happened soon after I left, he thought. The scientist stared at his fuel gauge. Oh. I've only got enough plutonium for 2 more trips. I'll never find out exactly when the war happened, George scratched his chin. Maybe if I travel back to 1 day after I left, then at least I can warn the authorities of the impending apocalypse. He turns the dial further to the left and presses a red button. The date is the 16th day of March 2025. And the time machine sits amidst a pile of smoking rubble. The old man begins to sweat profusely. He starts to cough and vomits onto his lap. Ugh! I really don't feel very well. His skin starts to blister. I'd better get back home before I die from radioactive poisoning. He sets the dates on the control panel back to the 15th of March 2025. He presses the red button, and the time machine is engulfed in a kaleidoscopic multicolored light. He presses the red button. The time machine is engulfed in kaleidoscopic multicolored lights. Suddenly, the thermoreaction chamber explodes. The end.